Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything, you guys. Watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. Bronzeville. Chicago was a symphony of resilience blues notes, drifting from juke joints on Martin Luther King, drive cornbread sizzling at corner stands, and the heartbeat of a black community that rose against the odds. Kayla Johnson was its daughter, a 28-year-old coder who poured her fire into teaching kids to code for free at the community center. Her tight curls framed deep brown eyes that sparkled with defiance. Her smile a beacon in the city's grit. Her program, patched together with donated laptops and open-source software, gave kids who'd never seen a computer a chance to build apps dream big. But it was fragile, held by grants and her relentless spirit. Half a continent away in the sleek towers of Austin, Texas, Richard Hayes ruled his tech empire with a cold precision that earned him the title Ice King. A 35-year-old billionaire with dark hair and eyes blue as a winter sky, he'd clawed his way from nothing. A laptop, a beat-up car, and a hunger to win. Crushing rivals was his art, and he painted it without remorse. When his team flagged Kayla's program as a threat to his new coding education platform, he didn't blink. Find her weak spots, he ordered from his South Lake Union office, sipping whiskey, the Austin skyline glittering below like a crown. 3 months later, her grants dried up. Her internet was cut, and the center evicted her thanks to Richard's donation with a hidden price. He raised his glass to victory. The whiskies burned sharp, but the triumph rang hollow. A note out of tune in his gilded world. Weeks later, on a restless night, Richard drove past the Bronzeville Community Center, telling himself it was just to see the proof of his win. The lot was empty, the windows dark save for one faint glow. Against his better judgment, he parked his black SUV and slipped inside, the janitor's mop swishing as he passed. The light came from a small room, and through the window he saw her, Kayla cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by boxes, tears streaming down her face. She clutched a child's drawing, a stick figure labeled Miss Kayla with smiling kids, the words, "Thank you for everything," scrawled in marker. Another, a collage of paint and code printouts, read, "I'll miss you, Miss Kayla." She pressed it to her chest, her sobs raw, shaking her frame, the sound piercing the quiet. Richard froze his breath, catching like he'd been struck. This wasn't a rival he'd outmaneuvered. This was a woman who'd woven hope, only to watch it unravel because of him. Her pain was a mirror exposing the void beneath his wealth, the cost of his crown as the Ice King slipped out. Her tears burned into his mind. Sleep a stranger that night, as he replayed her sobs, the drawing, the wreckage he'd wrought. Days bled into weeks of sleepless nights. Richard's Austin office, a cage of glass and regret. His assistant noted his distraction in meetings. His team sensed his edge dulling, but he barely registered their concern. Kayla's face haunted him, her strength and sorrow, a riddle he couldn't crack. He dug into her program, not for weaknesses, but for truth articles about kids coding apps, teens winning city contests, all because of her. She'd worked 3 jobs to graduate college. The first in her family, turned down tech giants to serve Bronzeville, where he tore down she built, where he hoarded she gave. The guilt was a beast clawing at him, and he knew he had to act. Sunflowers sent to her bookstore job were returned with a curt, "No thanks." Letters of regret came back, unopened. He even showed up at her Bronzeville apartment, only to learn she'd moved after a rent spike, another ripple of his destruction. But fate intervened on a rainy Chicago evening. Driving home from a board meeting, Richard spotted a car on the Dan Ryan Expressway. Hood up, steam rising. Kayla stood beside it, drenched her phone pressed to her ear. Frustration etched on her face. He pulled over reins, soaking his tailored suit, his heart pounding like it never had in billion-dollar deals. "Kayla, are you okay?" he called, stepping out the storm's roar, swallowing his voice. She turned shock, flashing across her face, then hardening into fury. "What are you doing here?" Her curls clung to her cheeks, her voice slicing through the rain like a blade. "Just driving by," he said, hands raised, rain streaming down his face. "Do you need help?" She glared, checking her phone, muttering, "No signal out here." Her eyes narrowed, but exhaustion won. "Fine. I don't have a choice. Do I?" He called his mechanic, the tow truck en route, and they stood under his umbrella, the tension thick as the downpour. Rain pattered on the fabric, a relentless rhythm, and Richard took a breath, his voice low. "I'm sorry, Kayla. What I did to your program, it was wrong. I saw you at the center crying, and it broke me. I want to make it right." She laughed sharp and bitter, her eyes blazing. "You destroyed my world, Richard. Kids who believed in me think I let them down. You didn't just kill a program, you killed their hope. Don't think a wetsuit and a sorry fixes that." Her words were a lash, her pain raw, and he felt it like a wound. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said, his voice rough, rain dripping from his hair. "But let me try. Please." Her eyes searched his, the umbrella a fragile shield against the storm lightning cracking to light her face. Her curls a dark halo, her skin glistening, her strength unbroken despite his chaos. Before he could think, he stepped closer, his hand brushing her cheek, wiping a raindrop, his touch warm against her cold skin. Her breath hitched, and their lips crashed together. A kiss born of storm and sorrow. His mouth was hot, urgent tasting of rain and regret. His hands sliding to her waist, pressing through her soaked jacket, tracing the curve of her hips. The rain's roar dulled, overtaken by their heartbeats, loud as a Bronzeville drum line. Kayla's fingers gripped his shirt nails, scraping through wet fabric, a soft moan escaping her lost in the storm's fury. The streetlight's glow bathed them, her skin shimmering, the scent of his cologne sandalwood and cedar, blending with the rain's earthy tang, wrapping her in a dizzying haze. She pulled back, breathless, her voice fierce. "This doesn't fix anything, Richard." Her eyes burned, holding defiance, but a flicker of something. Hope maybe lingered. He nodded, rain streaming down his face, his voice a vow. "I know, but let me earn it." "Kayla, please." She stepped away, the umbrella tilting rain splashing her face. "You've got a long road ahead," she said, turning to the tow truck's lights. "Don't expect me to pave it." She walked off, her silhouette, fierce against the storm, leaving Richard drenched, his heart racing. The taste of her lips, a fire he couldn't quench. Back in Austin, Richard threw himself into unraveling Kayla's program, its impact, its heart determined to rebuild what he'd torn down. But Bronzeville wasn't a boardroom, and Kayla wasn't a deal to be closed. He sent sunflowers to her, bookstore job. They came back with a note. "Keep them." He wrote letters raw with regret. They returned unopened. He even showed up at her new Bronzeville apartment, only to learn she'd moved again. Another casualty of his ripple effect. His office, with its glass walls and riverfront view, felt like a prison. The Austin skyline mocking his isolation. Marcus Tate, his best friend and tech director, caught him staring at the Colorado River, his sharpness gone. "You're off, Rich," Marcus said, his voice warm but blunt. "What's eating you?" Richard confessed. "I crushed someone. Marcus Kayla Johnson, her coding program in Bronzeville. She's fire, and I put it out. I need to fix it." Marcus raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Fixing that's going to take more than money. She's Bronzeville tough, and you've got a mountain to climb." Richard nodded, the weight of his sins heavy. But Kayla's kiss, her tears drove him forward. In Bronzeville, Kayla rebuilt her armor. She worked at a bookstore on 47th Street, the creak of shelves and scent of old pages, a refuge from her pain. Nia Carter showed up with cornbread and a warning, her braids swinging as she scrolled her phone. Vanessa Reed's at it again. Kayla. She's online calling you a gold digger who's got Richard on a leash. She's leaking his merger details, trying to tank him. Kayla's jaw tightened. Vanessa's venom a fresh cut. Let her play her games, she said, her voice sharp. I'm not here for her or him. But Nia saw through her softening. That kiss wasn't nothing, sis. You're hurting, and he's in your head. Kayla's fingers brushed her wooden bead bracelet, Amara's gift, a relic of civil rights marches. It was a mistake, she said, but her voice wavered the memory of Richard's touch. Hot, desperate, rain-soaked, burning bright, she whispered. Nicky Giovanni's words. I am so perfect, so divine, so ethereal, so surreal. She was unbroken, but the crack in her heart begged for mending. The spark came at a Chicago tech conference where Kayla spoke about her program's impact, despite its fall. Lila Brooks, a philanthropist who'd once backed her, was there offering a chance to revive her dream. Kayla stood at the podium, her navy dress sharp, her curls loose, her voice fierce as she spoke of kids, coding apps, finding hope in Bronzeville's grit. This city's afire, she said, quoting Giovanni, and we rise. The crowd roared, Lila's nod, a glimmer of hope, but Vanessa Reed slithered in her red dress, a warning, her smile venomous. Nice speech. Vanessa purred loud enough for the crowd, but a failed program doesn't make you a star, sweetheart. Stick to bookstores, not tech. Her words jabbed at Kayla's race and roots. The crowd's murmurs a sting. Kayla's fists clenched, but she grinned, her Bronzeville fire blazing. Funny, Vanessa, I didn't know. Crashing was your brand. How's that last pitch going? Laughter erupted, and Vanessa's eyes narrowed, retreating her barb. No match for Kayla's steel. Richard watched from the back. Uninvited, his heart pounding. He'd come to offer Lila a partnership to fund Kayla's program, but Vanessa's attack shifted his focus. He approached Kayla post-speech, his suit crisp, his voice unsteady. You were phenomenal, he said, his eyes tracing her face, catching the stage lights on her skin. I'm here to help Kayla. No games, just a chance to make it right. She crossed her arms, her bracelet glinting, her voice. Ice. You think a conference and promises fix what you broke. I don't trust you, Richard, and I don't need your charity. She turned, but her eyes lingered, the ghost of their kiss, a flame she couldn't douse. Richard watched her go, the crowd's hum fading, Vanessa's rumors, a growing shadow. He wasn't the Ice King anymore. Kayla had thawed him, and he'd fight for her. Not just for her program, but for the heart he'd begun to hope might be his. Can a storm-born kiss ignite love between enemies? Or will Kayla's pain and Vanessa's venom keep them apart? What's next for Richard's redemption and Kayla's fire? Share your thoughts in the comments and hit that subscribe button to follow their wild, heartfelt journey in Hearts in Bronzeville. Chicago pulsed with the rhythm of blues joints and the glow of streetlights. But inside Kayla Johnson's new apartment on 47th Street, the air was thick with unresolved fire. A week had passed since the rain-soaked kiss on the Dan Ryan Expressway, when Richard Hayes, the billionaire who'd crushed her coding program, had seared her with his lips, his sandalwood cologne mingling with the storm's tang. That kiss, fierce and fleeting, had sparked a heat Kayla wasn't ready to name, but her words to him. This doesn't fix anything. Were a shield guarding her heart from the man who'd torn her world apart. Kayla stood in her tiny kitchen chopping collards, the earthy scent blending with cornbread baking in the oven. Her wooden bead bracelet, a gift from her grandmother, Amara, clicked against the counter, a tether to Bronzeville's grit and her own strength. She hummed Nina Simone's Feeling Good, the blues melody steadying her, but her mind kept drifting to Richard, his blue eyes that softened when she snapped back, his voice raw with regret. pleading for a chance. Get it together, Kayla, she thought, slicing harder. He's the Ice King, not your savior. Her phone buzzed, Nia Carter's name flashing. Kayla answered, smirking. Nia, if you're here to drag me to another blues club, I'm still recovering from last time. Nia's laugh was sharp, pure Chicago fire. Recovering from that billionaire lip lock, you mean spill it. Kayla, what's the deal with Mr. Austin Tech? He's still sending flowers, right? Kayla's cheeks warmed, the memory of Richard's touch, his hands on her waist, the rain's cold bite flashing through her. He's wasting his time, she said, her voice firmer than she felt. Sunflower's letters acting all sorry. It's just guilt. He broke my kids' dreams, Nia. A kiss doesn't rebuild a program. Uh-huh, Nia said, unconvinced. But you didn't slap him. So that kiss hit different. Look, Vanessa Reed's still out here posting that you're a gold digger messing with his merger. She's got Austin blogs eating it up. You gonna let her play you, or you gonna fight? Kayla's grip tightened on the knife. Vanessa's venom, a fresh wound from the conference. I'm fighting for my kids. Not him, she said. But Nia's words stung a challenge. She wasn't just a coder or a teacher. She was a black woman from Bronzeville, forged in blues and resilience. And she'd be damned if Vanessa or Richard dimmed her light. The fight gained traction when Lila Brooks, a Chicago-based philanthropist who'd once funded Kayla's program, emailed her. I'm curating a feature on tech education for underserved communities. Write about Bronzeville's coding potential. Blues grit kids. Impress me. And it's a paid gig with funding potential. Kayla's heart raced the chance to revive her program a lifeline, but Lila's tone, crisp skeptical, felt like a test. Could a self-taught coder from Bronzeville hold her own in a world of tech elites? She dove into the article, weaving tales of blues joints that inspired code cornbread stands that fed dreams. But doubt whispered, she wasn't enough. In Austin, Richard was unraveling in his South Lake Union office, the glass walls reflecting a man he barely recognized. His empire, once his pride, felt like a hollow shell. The victories he'd chased, now dust in his mouth, Kayla's tears. Her kiss had shattered his icy facade, and he couldn't return to the man who'd crushed her. Marcus Tate, his best friend and tech director, caught him staring at the Colorado River, his edge gone. You're a ghost, Rich. Marcus said, his voice warm but blunt. What's got you so twisted? Richard confessed, his voice low. I destroyed someone, Marcus. Kayla Johnson, her coding program in Bronzeville. She's everything. I need to fix it, but she won't even look at me. Marcus leaned back, intrigued. Fixing that's going to take more than your checkbook. She's Chicago fire, and you've got a long road to earn her trust. Richard nodded, the weight of his sins heavy, but the memory of Kayla's strength fueled him. He tried everything. Sunflowers to her bookstore, returned with. Keep them. Letters of regret, sent back unopened. But persistence was his trade, and he found an opening when Lila invited Kayla to a tech dinner in Santa Fe, New Mexico, to discuss funding. Richard leveraged his network to secure an invite, knowing it was a gamble, but the thought of Kayla's fire drove him across states. Santa Fe's adobe streets glowed under a desert sunset, the air rich with the scent of chili and piñon wood. The dinner was held at a small restaurant in the historic district, its clay walls adorned with native art paper lanterns, casting a warm, flickering glow. Kayla arrived in a borrowed sapphire dress, its silk clinging to her curves, her curls loose, the wooden bead bracelet glinting at her wrist. She felt like an outsider among the tech philanthropists, their talk of algorithms and grants a world away from Bronzeville's blues. But Lila's presence and the chance to fund her kids kept her grounded. Richard was there, his navy suit sharp, his blue eyes catching the lantern light as they found her across the room. He approached, his voice unsteady, a crack in his Ice King armor. Kayla, you look stunning. Can we talk? Just a moment. Her eyes narrowed. the conference sting still fresh, but the crowd's gaze made her nod. 1 minute, Hayes, make it quick. They stepped onto a small courtyard, the sunset painting the sky in fiery reds and purples, the air warm with desert spice. Kayla crossed her arms, her bracelet clicking, her voice sharp. What now? More flowers. I'm here for Lila, not your redemption tour. I'm not touring, he said, stepping closer, his cologne sandalwood and cedar blending with the chili's heat. I was wrong. Kayla, I saw you cry at the center and it gutted me. Your program wasn't a threat. It was a gift. I want to fund it, connect you with my network, whatever it takes. But I need you to know why I did it. Her brow arched, her voice steel. Why? Because you're the Ice King who buries anyone in your way. He flinched, his hand rubbing his neck, the lantern light catching the strain in his face. Because that's who I was. Lydia, my ex-fiancée. She left me before our wedding. Said I was too cold, too obsessed with winning. It's right. I built walls, crushed anything that challenged me. Until you. Kayla. You broke them. His voice was raw, his eyes searching hers, and Kayla's heart wavered, the rain-soaked kiss flashing through her. Before she could respond, Vanessa Reed swept in her crimson dress, a flare of trouble, her smile venomous. Kayla. How quaint to see Bronzeville's coder in Santa Fe. She said loud enough for guests to turn, but let's be honest, your little program was a hobby, not a player. Stick to Chicago's streets, not our leagues. Her words jabbed at Kayla's race and roots, the crowd's whispers a sharp sting. Kayla's fists clenched, but she grinned, her Bronzeville fire blazing. Funny, Vanessa. I didn't know. Flops were your specialty. How's that last pitch crash going? Laughter rippled, and Vanessa's eyes narrowed, retreating her barb. No match for Kayla's steel. Richard watched pride flickering in his eyes. You're a force, he said, his voice low, his hand brushing hers, sending a spark through her. Let me take you somewhere private. One dinner. Kayla. Let me show you. I'm serious. She hesitated. Naya's warning. He's trouble. Sis echoing, but curiosity won. One dinner, she said, her voice firm. Don't make me regret it. The restaurant's private room was a sanctuary of warmth. Adobe walls glowing under paper lanterns, a single table set with candles, their flames dancing in the dim light. A mariachi band played a soft, soulful tune, the guitar's notes weaving through the air like a lover's whisper. Kayla sat across from Richard, her sapphire dress catching the candlelight, her skin radiant, her curls a soft frame. The waiter served green chili enchiladas, their spicy aroma mingling with the scent of mesquite from a nearby fireplace, but the food was a backdrop to the tension between them. Richard leaned forward, his voice low, raw. I was wrong about you, Kayla. I thought your program was a small-time project, but it was. Life Kids building apps, winning contests. You gave them hope. I never grasped. I want to fund it, bring in my network, whatever you need, but I need you to know why I broke it. Kayla's eyes narrowed, her bracelet clicking as she set down her fork. Why? Because you're the king who crushes peasants like me. He winced, his hand gripping his glass, the candlelight catching the strain in his face. Because I was empty. Lydia left me, said I was too cold, too driven. She wasn't wrong. I buried myself in winning, crushing anything in my path. Until I saw you cry. Kayla, you showed me what I'd lost. His voice cracked. His eyes locked on hers, and Kayla's resolve faltered the honesty in his words, a spark in the lantern-lit dark. You don't get to fix me with a speech, she said, her voice trembling. You hurt my kids, Richard. You hurt me. Her fingers brushed her bracelet, grounding her, but his gaze held her steady and unguarded. "I know," he said, reaching for her hand, his fingers warm, steady. "And I'll fight every day to make it right if you let me." His thumb grazed her wrist, sending a shiver through her. The mariachi's rhythm sinking with her pulse, the music slowed, a haunting melody, and Richard stood offering his hand. "Dance with me," he said, his voice a quiet plea. Kayla hesitated, her heart battling her head, but she took his hand, letting him lead her to a small space by the band. The lantern's glow bathed them, her dress shimmering, his suit soft against her as he pulled her close. His hand rested on her lower back, fingers pressing through the silk, tracing the curve of her spine, igniting sparks. Her hand slid to his chest, feeling the steady thud of his heart, the warmth of his skin through his shirt. The guitar's notes swirled a soft counterpoint to their breaths, the scent of his cologne, sandalwood, and cedar, mixing with the chilly's heat enveloping her. They swayed bodies close, the world shrinking to their rhythm. His lips brushed her ear, his breath hot teasing. "You're not what I expected, Kayla," he murmured, his voice a low rumble. "You're fire, and I'm burning for you." Her fingers tightened on his shirt, a soft gasp escaping her lost in the mariachi's melody. She tilted her head, their lips hovering the air thick with want. Her nails grazed his chest, drawing a quiet groan from him, the sound vibrating against her skin. But doubt surged, Lydia's shadow, Vanessa's venom, her own fractured trust. She pulled back, her voice shaky but firm. "This doesn't mean I trust you, Richard. You've got a long way to go." She stepped away, her heart pounding, the ghost of his touch lingering like a blues riff. She couldn't shake. Back in the main room, Marcus Tate, Richard's friend, caught Kayla by the bar, his warm smile a contrast to Richard's frost. "You're shaking things up," he said, his tone kind but cautious. "But watch out for Richard. Lydia broke him when she left, called him out in the press, said he was heartless. He's trying, but he's got scars." Kayla's stomach twisted, Marcus's words sowing doubt. "I'm not here to heal him," she said, her voice steady. "I'm here for my kids." But as she glanced at Richard talking to Lila, his eyes flicking to her, she felt the pull of him, a current she wasn't sure she could resist. That night, Kayla stood in her hotel room, the Santa Fe skyline glowing through the window. The mariachi's melody echoed in her mind. Richard's words, "Your fire burning bright," she whispered. Nikki Giovanni's choices to herself. "If I can't do what I want to do, then my job is to not do what I don't want to do." She wasn't ready to forgive, but she wasn't ready to run either. Richard Hayes was a storm, and Kayla Johnson was no stranger to weathering them. The Bronzeville morning was a pulse of life blues riffs, drifting from corner clubs, the scent of cornbread wafting from street stands, and the hum of a community that thrived against the odds. Kayla Johnson stood in her apartment's tiny kitchen, stirring a pot of collard greens, the earthy aroma grounding her in a world that felt unsteady. 2 weeks had passed since the candlelit dance in Santa Fe, where Richard Hayes's hands had traced her spine, his whispered words, "You're fire, and I'm burning for you," igniting a spark she couldn't douse. Their kiss hadn't happened, but the heat of his touch, the mariachi's soulful strum, lingered like a blues note. She couldn't shake Kayla's wooden bead bracelet, a gift from her grandmother. Amara clicked against the counter as she chopped onions, her mind a tangle of doubt and desire. She hummed Nina Simone's Feeling Good, the melody a shield. But Richard's face, his blue eyes soft with regret, his voice raw with truth, kept breaking through. The Ice King of Austin's tech scene was trying to rebuild her coding program, but trust was a bridge she wasn't ready to cross. "He broke you once, Kayla." She thought, her knife slicing harder. "Don't let him do it again." Her phone buzzed, Lila Brooks's name flashing. Kayla's heart skipped. Lila's article about Bronzeville's coding potential was her shot at reviving her program. "Kayla, your piece is strong," Lila said, her voice crisp but warm. "The board wants a full feature 5,000 words on tech education in underserved communities. We're hosting a summit in Austin next week to pitch funding. You're invited, but you'll need to impress the elite. Can you handle it?" Kayla's jaw tightened at the challenge. Lila's tone a subtle test of her as a black woman from Bronzeville. "I'll own that summit," she said, her voice sharp with Chicago grit. "You'll have my feature and they'll be begging to fund me." Lila chuckled. "I like your fire. Don't let it burn out." The call ended, but the pressure settled like a weight. Kayla could write about Bronzeville's blues and coders in her sleep, but proving herself to a room of Austin tech moguls. Richard's world was a battle she wasn't sure she'd win. Naya. Carter showed up at the bookstore where Kayla worked, her braids swinging a foil pan of cornbread in hand. "You're dodging me, sis," Nia said, plopping onto a stool, scrolling her phone. "Vanessa Reed's still at it, posting that you're Richard's side hustle, dragging his merger down. She's got Austin blogs calling you a Chicago opportunist. You gonna let her play you like that?" Kayla's stomach twisted. Vanessa's venom from Santa Fe still raw. "She's just noise," she said, shelving books, her bracelet clicking. "I'm focused on Lila's summit, getting my kids' program back." Nia's eyes softened, seeing through her. "And Richard? You danced with him." "Kayla, that wasn't nothing. He's got you twisted and I don't like it. His ex Lydia trashed him in the press, called him heartless. What if you're just his rebound?" Kayla's chest tightened, Nia's words hitting a nerve. "I'm nobody's rebound," she snapped, but doubt crept in. Was she a distraction for Richard? A way to soothe his guilt over Lydia? The thought gnawed, amplified by whispers she'd overheard at the bookstore about Richard's ex and how he'd never moved on. Kayla pushed it down, diving into her article, but the seed of insecurity took root. That evening, while sorting files for the summit, Kayla stumbled on an email forwarded by Lila, an anonymous tip to Austin investors, leaking details of Richard's merger with a note. "Hayes is distracted by his Chicago fling strike. Now, the sender's IP traced to Vanessa Reed's firm." Kayla's blood ran cold. Vanessa wasn't just spreading rumors. She was sabotaging Richard's empire, using Kayla as the weapon. She had to warn him, even if it meant stepping back into his orbit. The chance came at Lila's tech summit in Austin, a sleek affair at the Austin Convention Center, its glass walls reflecting the Colorado River's glint. Kayla arrived in a tailored black dress, her curls loose, her wooden bead bracelet, a quiet rebellion against the sea of suits. The crowd, tech moguls, investors, philanthropists, chattered about algorithms and profits, their glances sliding over her like she was invisible. Richard stood across the room, his charcoal suit sharp, his blue eyes finding her a flicker of warmth, breaking his usual frost. Vanessa was there too, her crimson dress a warning, her smile sharp as she whispered to a board member. Kayla approached Richard during a break, her voice low, urgent. "We need to talk. Vanessa's leaking your merger details, emails to your investors, pinning it on me. I found proof." She showed him her phone, the anonymous tip glaring. His jaw clenched, but his response was ice. "I don't need you fighting my battles, Kayla. I've got this under control." His dismissal cut echoing Santa Fe's tension, reducing her to an outsider in his world. Her chest burned, hurt, flaring. "I'm not fighting for you," she hissed, keeping her voice down. "I'm fighting for me, for my kids. But if you think I'm just some distraction, you're wrong." She turned her heels, clicking on the polished floor. The summit's hum, a dull roar in her ears. Vanessa's smirk from across the room was a slap, and Richard's silence stung deeper than any barb. Tension erupted that night in Richard's Austin office, a glass-walled penthouse overlooking the river. Kayla stormed in, her dress swapped for jeans and a sweater, her curls wild, her eyes blazing. "You don't get to shut me out like that." she said, her voice trembling with fury and something rawer. I showed you Vanessa's email because I care, Richard. But if you think I'm just some Bronzeville girl you can brush off, you're dead wrong. He stood from his desk, closing the distance, his presence overwhelming, his shirt unbuttoned at the collar, the city lights casting shadows on his face. You think I don't see you? He said, his voice low, rough. You're in my head every damn day, Kayla. But I don't need you risking yourself for my messes. Her breath caught his words, a spark in the dark. Then what do you need me for? She demanded, stepping closer, her hands clenched. Your guilt trip. A way to forget Lydia. Tell me because I'm done guessing. Her voice cracked her bracelet, clicking the weight of her love and fear spilling out. His eyes darkened, a storm brewing. You're not Lydia, he said, his voice a growl. You're everything. I'm terrified to lose. He reached for her, his hand cupping her cheek, thumb brushing her jaw, sending a shiver through her. City lights glowed through the glass, her curls catching their shimmer, her skin radiant. His other hand slid to her waist, pulling her close, fingers pressing through her sweater, feeling the curve of her hip. The air crackled, charged with need, his breath scented with coffee and sandalwood mingling with hers. Their lips crashed together, a kiss born of anger and longing. His mouth was hot, urgent tasting of coffee and want, his hand tangling in her curls, tugging gently. Kayla's hands found his chest, fingers curling into his shirt, grazing the taut skin beneath, feeling the rapid thud of his heart. A soft moan escaped her, drowned by the hum of the city below, the glass walls reflecting their silhouettes. His lips trailed to her neck, grazing her pulse, sparking electricity down her spine, the scent of his cologne enveloping her. Her nails scraped lightly against his chest, drawing a low groan from him, the sound vibrating through her. But doubt surged, Vanessa's taunts, Lydia's ghost, her own shattered trust. She loved him. God, she loved him. But love wasn't enough if he couldn't see her as more than a redemption project. She pushed him back, her voice breaking. I love you, Richard, but I won't stay where I'm not truly seen. I'm not your fix, and I'm not her. Tears welled, but she held her chin high, Bronzeville fire unyielding. His eyes widened, shock and pain flashing across his face. Kayla, you're not, he started, but she cut him off, her voice steady despite the ache. I deserve to be loved, not saved. She unclasped her wooden bead bracelet, placing it on his desk with a note scrawled on a post-it. I'm worth more than your guilt. She turned her sneakers silent on the hardwood tears, blurring her vision as she fled the office. The Austin skyline glittered, indifference swallowing her as she left. Kayla returned to Bronzeville the next day, the city's blues and cornbread, a bittersweet balm. She threw herself into Lila's feature, working at the bookstore, the creak of shelves and musty pages, a refuge from her pain. Amara visited her warm eyes, cutting through Kayla's facade. You're carrying a wound, child, Amara said, her voice rich with the strength of a civil rights warrior. Love's a risk, but you're a Johnson woman. Your fire burns brighter than fear. Kayla nodded, tears stinging Amara's words, rooting deep. That night at a blues club, she read Nikki Giovanni's Choices to a small crowd, her voice steady. If I can't do what I want to do, then my job is to not do what I don't want to do. The applause was soft but real, reigniting her spark. She was phenomenal, divine, unbreakable. But Marcus found her at the club, his kind smile tinged with urgency. Richard's a mess, Kayla, he said, voice low. He's off his game, losing focus. The board's circling and Vanessa's feeding them lies. He loves you, but he's scared. Lydia's betrayal left scars, and he's terrified of losing you. Kayla's heart twisted, Marcus's words slicing through her armor. He had his chance, she said. But her voice wavered, the memory of Richard's kiss. Angry, desperate, real, burning, bright. She wasn't sure what she'd do. But as she walked home under Bronzeville's streetlights, the city's blues echoing her pulse, she knew she wasn't done fighting, not for her kids, and maybe not for him. Bronzeville's pulse thrummed through its neon-lit streets. The wail of blues from juke joints and the sizzle of cornbread stands a stark contrast to the ache in Kayla Johnson's heart. A week had passed since she'd fled Richard Hayes's glass-walled office in Austin, leaving behind her wooden bead bracelet and a note scrawled on a post-it. "I'm worth more than your guilt." The memory of their kiss, angry, desperate tasting of coffee and want, burned like a live wire. But so did his silence when she'd confessed her love. She'd bared her heart, and he'd let her walk away. Now back in her cramped Bronzeville apartment with peeling walls and a creaky bed, Kayla was piecing herself together one jagged shard at a time. The bookstore on 47th Street had become her sanctuary, its shelves of worn novels and poetry, a shield against the pain. She flipped through Nikki Giovanni's cotton candy on a rainy day during quiet shifts, whispering, "I want to be loved," the poet's words echoing her own hunger. Her grandmother Amara had visited days ago, her eyes sharp with the wisdom of a civil rights warrior. "You're a Johnson." "Kayla," Amara had said, her voice warm but fierce. "Your fire burns brighter than any hurt. Don't let fear snuff it out." Kayla had nodded, tears stinging, but doubt lingered. Had she been a fool to love Richard, to believe his regret was more than a billionaire's whim? Her phone buzzed, Nia Carter's name flashing. Kayla answered, bracing for her best friend's fire. "Yos, is you good?" Nia's voice was sharp, Chicago grit laced with concern. "You've been ghosting me since Austin. And heads up, Vanessa Reed's still out here posting that you're the reason Richard's merger's tanking. She's got Austin blogs calling you a Bronzeville hustler." Kayla's grip tightened, Vanessa's venom a fresh wound. "Let her talk," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm finishing Lila's feature. If I nail it, I'm getting my program back. No thanks to her or him," Nia snorted. "You say that, but you're hurting Kayla. That kiss in Austin wasn't nothing. You love him, and it's messing you up. What are you gonna do?" Kayla's fingers brushed her bare wrist, the absence of her bracelet, a quiet ache. "I'm writing," she said, her voice firm. "Lila's summit features my ticket out of this mess. I'm betting on me. Nia, not him." But as she spoke, the memory of Richard's touch, his hands on her, his heart thudding under her palm, clawed at her resolve. Lila's deadline loomed, and Kayla poured her soul into the article weaving stories of Bronzeville's blues joints that sparked code cornbread stands, that fed dreams and kids who coded their way to hope. The piece was her best yet, and Lila's reply was swift. "This is phenomenal, Kayla. The summit's in Austin, and we want you to present the boards ready to fund your program if you close the deal." The victory should have been sweet, but it was bittersweet. Without Richard's dimpled smile, his voice that had called her fire. The storm broke on a humid evening when Lydia Hamilton appeared at the community center like a specter from Richard's past. Kayla had been called back to Bronzeville to collect her final belongings. Mildred, the center's manager, insisted, not Richard. She stepped into the center's main room, her denim jacket damp from a drizzle, her curls frizzing her heart heavy. The space was quiet, the fluorescent lights dim, and Richard stood by a window, his black shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his eyes distant. Before Kayla could speak, the door opened and Lydia walked in, tall, blonde, and polished in a cream blazer. Lydia was a vision of Silicon Valley elegance. Everything Kayla wasn't. Her blue eyes softened as she saw Richard. "I needed to see you," she said, her voice smooth, practiced. "I was wrong to leave you, Richard. I thought I wanted a different life, but I miss us. I'm starting a design firm and I need your support for old time's sake." She stepped closer, her hand touching his arm, her voice pleading. "Can we talk?" Kayla's heart stopped, her breath catching like a punch. She stood half hidden by a stack of boxes, frozen, as Richard's jaw clenched, his voice low. "Lydia, there's nothing to talk about. You made your choice." But Lydia leaned in her arms, wrapping around him in a hug, her head resting on his chest. Richard stiffened, but he didn't push her away. Not immediately. Kayla's world shattered. The sight of them, Lydia's polish against Richard's strength, was a blade to her heart. She'd been a fool, thinking she could outshine a ghost who'd owned him first. Tears burned, but she refused to let them fall. She turned her sneakers silent on the linoleum and slipped out the drizzle outside, turning to a pour. In the center's office, she scribbled a note on a flyer. "I'm done paying for your past. Richard, be happy with Lydia." She left it on her old desk, her hands shaking, and ran into the rain, the storm swallowing her sobs. Back in Bronzeville, Kayla threw herself into her writing. The bookstore's quiet, a stark contrast to Austin's gleam. Lila's summit was days away, and she polished her feature with a ferocity born of pain. Her words painting Bronzeville's soul, its blues that healed its cornbread, that warmed its kids who rose. The article was a triumph, and Lila's response was glowing. "You've outdone yourself." "Kayla, the board's buzzing. Present this in Austin and your program's funded." But the win felt hollow. Richard's absence a void. No funding could fill. Nia showed up at the bookstore, her braids swinging, her eyes blazing. "Vanessa's escalating," she said, showing Kayla her phone. "She's got proof, more leaked emails saying Richard's merger's failing because of you. She's trying to bury him and your collateral damage." Kayla's jaw clenched, anger surging. "She's using me to get to him," she said, her voice low. "I'm done hiding, Nia. I'm going to Austin and I'm shutting her down." But her heart whispered a quieter truth. She wasn't just fighting for her program. She was fighting for the man she'd left behind. Amara's words came back as Kayla packed for Austin, her grandmother's voice a beacon. "Your fire burns brighter than fear." She spent the night pacing the rain, tapping her windows like a blues riff, her resolve hardening. She'd face Richard not to beg, but to close this chapter, to prove she was enough, with or without him. The rain hadn't stopped, a steady drizzle soaking Bronzeville's streets as Kayla stepped out, her jacket clinging to her skin. She'd planned to head to Austin, but fate had other plans. On Martin Luther King Drive, under a flickering neon sign, a black SUV pulled up its headlights, cutting through the storm. The door opened and Richard Hayes stepped out, rain streaming down his dark hair, his white shirt soaked, clinging to his chest like a second skin. In his hand was her wooden bead bracelet, and her note crumpled and wet, his eyes fierce with resolve. "Kayla," he rasped, his voice rough, desperate over the rain's roar. "You're wrong about Lydia, about me, about everything." She crossed her arms, her heart pounding, rain dripping from her curls. "Wrong. I saw her hugging you, Richard. Don't tell me it's a misunderstanding. I'm not naive if you want her. Go. I'm done." Her voice cracked, but she stood tall, Bronzeville's neon bathing her in defiant light. Richard shook his head, stepping closer, rain pouring off his coat. "You think I want Lydia?" She came to pitch a project, to apologize. I told her no. I pushed her away the second you left, but you were gone before I could explain. He held up the bracelet, its beads glinting, and tore up the note, the scraps falling like confetti. "You're not my guilt, Kayla. You're my reason. I walked away from $1 billion deal to protect you. Vanessa tried to use your name to ruin me, and I wouldn't let her." Her breath caught tears mixing with rain as his words shattered her walls. He stepped closer, his hand brushing her cheek, wiping away a tear. his touch warm against her cold skin. The neon sign's glow caught his eyes, raw and earnest, the scent of his cologne sandalwood and cedar mingling with the rain's earthy tang. "I love you. Kayla Johnson," he said, voice breaking. "I'm done running from it." Her heart thundered, his sacrifice cracking her armor. She reached for him, and he pulled her into his arms, their lips crashing together in a kiss that drowned the storm. His mouth was hot, urgent tasting of rain and need, his hands sliding to her waist, pressing through her soaked jacket, feeling the curve of her hips. The rain's rhythm faded, replaced by their heartbeats, a Bronzeville drumline in sync, her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, a soft moan escaping her lost in the storm's wail. His lips grazed her jaw, sparking shivers down her spine, the neon light illuminating her skin, her curls a dark halo. Her nails scraped lightly against his neck, drawing a low groan from him, the sound vibrating against her lips. He pulled back, forehead resting against hers, breath ragged. "Don't go," he whispered, his lips brushing her ear, his voice a plea. "I'm yours, Kayla, all in." She searched his eyes, her voice trembling, but sure. "You better mean it, Richard, because I'm not half in. Prove it every day." She rose on her toes, kissing him again, slower, deeper, sealing a vow under the rain-soaked sky. They stood there wrapped in each other, the neon sign flickering, Bronzeville's pulse echoing their own. Kayla pulled back, a smile breaking through her tears. "I'm going to Austin," she said, her voice firm. "For my kids, for me. But I want you there, Richard, as my partner, not my savior." He nodded, his hand cupping her face, rain streaming down his smile. "Every step, Kayla. For you." He slipped the wooden bead bracelet back on her wrist, its weight a promise, their fingers entwining as the storm raged on. Back in her apartment, they sat on her creaky couch, towels draped over their shoulders, the rain tapping the windows like a blues beat. Kayla held a mug of cocoa, her curls damp, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. "I'm not letting you off easy," she said, her voice soft but resolute. "I've got Lila's summit, my kids' program to rebuild. You're in this with me, Richard. No shortcuts." He kissed her forehead, his voice a vow. "I'm here, Kayla, for every line of code, every fight, every kiss." The rain slowed, Bronzeville's neon casting a soft glow through the window. Kayla leaned into him, her head on his chest, his heartbeat a steady rhythm. They'd faced the storm, and though Lydia's shadow and Vanessa's schemes lingered, Kayla knew she was enough phenomenal divine, and ready to fight for a love that was real. The Bronzeville dawn was a soft hum of blues, the neon glow of 47th Street, fading as the city stirred. Kayla Johnson stood in her apartment packing a suitcase, the scent of cornbread lingering from last night's dinner. A week had passed since the rain-soaked night when Richard Hayes had torn up her resignation note, slipped her wooden bead bracelet back on her wrist, and kissed her under Bronzeville's flickering lights, vowing to love her for real. That kiss, deep and desperate, had reignited a fire she'd tried to bury. But trust was still a fragile thread. "Prove it, Richard," she'd told him, and he'd been trying texts, checking on her calls to brainstorm her program's revival. A quiet promise to face Vanessa Reed's schemes together. Kayla's bracelet clicked as she zipped her bag, her mind on the Austin Tech Summit, where Lila Brooks expected her to present her feature on Bronzeville's coding potential. The article was her ticket to funding her kids' program, a dream she'd fought for through tears and betrayal. She hummed Nina Simone's "Feeling Good," the blues melody steadying her, but Richard's face, his blue eyes raw with love, his dimpled smile kept slipping through her defenses. Their dance in Santa Fe, their kiss in Austin's office, Their reunion in the rain had woven a bond she couldn't deny, but Lydia Hamilton's shadow and Vanessa's venom loomed threatening to unravel it. Her phone buzzed. Lila's name flashing. "Kayla, your feature's a knockout." Lila said, her voice warm but urgent. "The Austin Summit's your stage pitch it to the board. Secure the funding." But Vanessa's circling, spreading rumors. "You're Richard's liability. Don't let her derail you." Kayla's jaw clenched. Vanessa's lies a fresh cut. "She won't touch me," she said, her Bronzeville grit sharp. "I'll be there. Lila and I'm bringing fire." The call ended, but Nia Carter's warning from the bookstore lingered. "Vanessa's got more emails," Nia had said, scrolling her phone. "She's leaking Richard's merger details, pinning it on you." "You're walking into a war zone, sis." Kayla's fingers brushed her bracelet, Amara's voice echoing. "Your fire burns brighter than fear." She wasn't just fighting for her program. She was fighting for her future with Richard by her side. If he could keep his promise. The flight to Austin was a blur. Kayla's nerves buzzing as she sat beside Richard, his hand brushing hers on the armrest. A quiet anchor. His eyes met hers, warm but intense. "You're gonna own that summit," he said, his voice low, a smile tugging his lips. "Just don't spill coffee on any investors." She rolled her eyes, smirking. "Keep talking. Ice King, and I'll spill it on you." But her heart fluttered the memory of his rain-soaked kiss, a steady pulse. Austin greeted them with a blaze of sun, the Colorado River glinting beyond South Lake Union's glass towers. The summit was held at the Austin Convention Center, its sleek halls alive with the hum of tech moguls and philanthropists, their talk of AI and startups, a world apart from Bronzeville's blues. Kayla wore a tailored navy dress, her curls loose, her bracelet glinting her presence, a defiance against the elite's sidelong glances. Richard stayed close, introducing her as Kayla Johnson, visionary coder, not the teacher, his hand brushing her back, sparking warmth through her. Lila met them at the entrance, her sharp eyes assessing Kayla. "The board's watching," she said. "Pitch your feature. Bronzeville's coding soul blues to bites. Make them feel it." And Kayla, Vanessa's here whispering, "Poison. Stay focused." Kayla nodded, her resolve hardening. But Vanessa's presence in a crimson suit was a storm cloud, her smile sharp as she schmoozed with investors. Marcus Tate, Richard's friend, pulled them aside, his voice low. "Vanessa's got new leaks," he said, showing his phone. "Emails to the board saying Richard's merger's failing because of you, Kayla. She's pushing for a vote to oust him." Richard's jaw tightened, his hand squeezing Kayla's. "We'll shut her down," he said, his voice firm. Together. The summit's main event was Kayla's pitch. Standing before a room of mostly white investors, she channeled Bronzeville's fire, her voice steady as she spoke of kids coding apps in community centers, blues joints, sparking innovation, and a city that rose against odds. She quoted Nikki Giovanni. "I am so perfect, so divine, so ethereal, so surreal. That's Bronzeville," she said, "and that's our future." The room erupted in applause. Lila's nod, a rare stamp of approval. "We're funding your program," an investor said. "Name your terms." Kayla's heart soared, but the victory was shadowed by Vanessa's next move. The confrontation came at a closed board meeting Richard had called to save his merger. Kayla, Nia, and Marcus had spent hours digging Nia's tech skills, uncovering a cache of Vanessa's emails, proof she'd been leaking sensitive data to rivals. They burst into the boardroom, a glass-walled space overlooking the river, as Vanessa spun lies about Richard's instability and Kayla's distraction. Kayla took the lead, her voice cutting through Vanessa's "been betraying you," she said, holding up a tablet with the emails. "She's the one tanking this merger, not Richard or me." Marcus projected the evidence, and the board's murmurs turned to outrage. Vanessa's face paled, her smile crumbling. "This is a setup," she stammered, but the chairman's voice was ice. "You're done, Miss Reed. Security will escort you out." As Vanessa was led away, her glare burned into Kayla, a promise of retribution. But Kayla stood tall, her Bronzeville fire unyielding. The board turned to Richard, their trust restored, and he addressed them with a steadiness Kayla hadn't seen before. "I've made mistakes," he said, his gaze flicking to her. "But I'm stronger now because of her." He nodded at Kayla, and the board applauded. The merger secured. Outside in the river's golden light, Richard pulled Kayla aside, his voice low. "You were unstoppable," he said, his hand brushing hers, sending sparks through her. "Thank you, Kayla, for believing in me." She smiled, her voice soft but firm. "I did it for us, Richard. For my kids, for you." Their fingers intertwined, the warmth of his touch. A quiet vow. But the night held one more test. That evening in Richard's office, a storm brewed, not rain, but emotion. The glass walls reflected the Austin skyline, the river's glint, a backdrop to their quiet moment. Kayla stood by the window, the city's lights dancing on her skin, her navy dress swapped for a sweater and jeans, her curls loose. Richard approached his shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, his blue eyes fierce with resolve. "You changed everything today," he said, his voice rough, stepping close, the scent of his cologne sandalwood and cedar, mixing with the office's faint coffee aroma. She turned her bracelet, clicking, her voice trembling. "You changed me too, Richard. I was scared to trust you. Scared of Lydia's shadow, of Vanessa's lies. But you fought for me. For us." Her eyes searched his, the weight of their journey heavy. He reached for her, his hand cupping her cheek, thumb brushing her lips, sending a shiver through her. "You're not a shadow, Kayla," he said, his voice a growl. "You're my light." He pulled her close, their lips meeting in a kiss that burned away doubt. His mouth was hot, urgent tasting of coffee and need, his hands sliding to her waist, pressing through her sweater, tracing the curve of her hips. The city's hum faded, replaced by their breaths, ragged and synced, the glass walls reflecting their silhouettes. His fingers brushed her shoulders, peeling off her sweater, grazing the soft warmth of her skin, igniting sparks. Kayla's hands slid under his shirt, fingers grazing his chest nails, scraping lightly, drawing a low groan from him, the sound vibrating against her lips. The office's hum softened the river's glow, casting a silver sheen on her curls. Her skin, his lips trailed to her neck, grazing her pulse, sparking electricity down her spine. Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, a soft moan escaping her, lost in the quiet. They sank onto the couch, his hand cupping her face, his thumb tracing her jaw. The intimacy, a language of its own. They didn't cross the final line, but the closeness, the thud of his heart under her palm, the burn of her skin under his touch, was a vow louder than words. He pulled back, forehead resting against hers. Breath, heavy. "I'm yours, Kayla," he whispered, his voice. A promise. No more walls, no more fear. She searched his eyes, her voice steady but soft. "You better mean it, Richard, because I'm all in and I don't do halfway." She kissed him again, slower, deeper, sealing their bond. They sat on the couch, the city lights a soft glow. Kayla's head on his shoulder, his arm around her. "I'm going back to Bronzeville," she said, her voice resolute. "I've got a program to rebuild, a book to write. But I want you with me, Richard, as my equal, not my fixer." He kissed her temple, his voice firm. "I'm there, Kayla, for every kid, every line of code, every moment." The river flowed outside Austin's pulse, steady there, love, a fire that had burned through storms. Kayla whispered Giovanni's words to herself. "I am so perfect. so divine. With Richard, she believed it ready to code their future, one fearless step at a time. The Charleston sunset draped the low country in a veil of gold and crimson, its glow shimmering on the Ashley River, where magnolia trees swayed in a gentle breeze. Kayla Johnson stood barefoot in a historic garden, the warm earth grounding her, the air rich with the scent of jasmine and salt. Her white lace dress, simple yet radiant, hugged her curves, its delicate layers swaying as she adjusted the wooden bead bracelet at her wrist, a gift from her grandmother, Amara, a piece of Bronzeville's fire. Her tight curls cascaded freely, framing her deep brown eyes, and a smile, nervous but fierce, lit her face. Today she'd marry Richard Hayes, not as a victim of his past betrayal or a coder in his shadow, but as his equal, his love in a ceremony that was theirs alone. A year had passed since the Austin summit, where they'd unmasked Vanessa Reed's schemes and sealed their bond with a kiss that burned brighter than the city's lights. They'd faced Lydia Hamilton's ghost, Vanessa's venom, and their own fears, emerging bound by a love that was fierce, flawed, and undeniably real. Now, under a canopy of magnolias strung with lanterns, Kayla felt like she'd stepped into a dream, one where a Bronzeville coder could claim a future as vast as the Carolina sky. The garden buzzed with a small, vibrant gathering. Nia Carter, Kayla's best friend, adjusted a jasmine flower in her braids, her grin wide. "You're a queen, sis," Nia said, her eyes sparkling. "Bronzeville's cheering. But if Richard slips, I'm still ready to throw hands." Kayla laughed, hugging her. "Noted, but he's holding up. You're still my ride or die, though." Marcus Tate, Richard's best friend and tech director, stood nearby, his warm smile a quiet anchor. Amara, her silver braids gleaming, held a copy of Nikki Giovanni's poetry. Her presence a testament to the strength that had shaped Kayla. Lila Brooks, the philanthropist who'd championed Kayla's program, mingled with guests, her pride evident. Kayla's book, Bronzeville Bites Coding, Hope, had soared to bestseller lists, its pages a love letter to her city that inspired nationwide. She wasn't just a teacher anymore. She was a voice, a dreamer, a phenomenal woman. But shadows lingered. Vanessa, though disgraced after Austin had resurfaced online, posting vicious rumors about Richard's failed merger and Kayla's manipulative rise. The attacks stung, threatening their joy, but Kayla had learned to rise above quoting Giovanni to herself. "I am so perfect, so divine." Today was about love, not hate, and she'd face any storm with Richard by her side. The ceremony was set in a garden framed by magnolias, the river's murmur a gentle soundtrack. White chairs adorned with jasmine held their guests, Bronzeville friends, Charleston locals, and a few of Richard's trusted allies. Amara stood in for Kayla's absent parents, her eyes misty with pride. "You're my fire child," she'd whispered, handing Kayla a bouquet of magnolias. "Burn bright today," as a gala band played a soulful blues rendition of Amazing Grace. Kayla stepped onto the petal-strewn path, her bare feet sinking into the earth. The crowd hushed, but her eyes found Richard instantly. He stood at the altar, not in the cold suits of his Austin days, but in a light gray linen suit, his dark hair tousled by the breeze, a nervous smile breaking his stoic mask. His blue eyes locked on hers, bright with a love so unguarded it stole her breath. She grinned, whispering, "Ready to get burned for life." "Ice King." Laughter rippled, and Richard's dimple flashed. "Bring it, Bronzeville," he replied, his voice teasing, but his eyes said she was his world. The officiant, a Charleston local with a warm gullah cadence, began, but Kayla and Richard only saw each other when it was time for vows. Kayla spoke first, her voice steady but thick with emotion. "Richard Hayes, I vow to love you, challenge you and maybe spill coffee on your fancy laptops when you're too cocky. Laughter rose and she smiled through tears. I vow to make you laugh every day, even when we're fighting, and to stand by you through every storm, because you're my home. And if Lydia or anyone tries to hug you again, I'll roast you, then kiss you to make it right. Richard's laugh was soft, his eyes glistening. He gripped her hands, his voice trembling but sure. Kayla Johnson. I vow to survive every roast, every broken circuit, and every argument I'll lose spectacularly. I vow to make you breakfast every Sunday, even if you burn the kitchen down. And I vow to love you not because I owe you, but because you're the fire that thawed me. He leaned in, whispering for her alone. I love you, Kayla, forever. They exchanged rings, silver bands etched with tiny magnolia blooms, and the crowd erupted in cheers. The officiant grinned. By the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Kiss her quick, Richard, before she changes her mind and roasts you. Richard pulled Kayla close, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was slow, deep, a promise woven into every touch. The sunset's glow bathed them, her curls catching the light, her bracelet glinting. His hands slid to her lower back, pressing through the lace, feeling the curve of her spine sending sparks through her. Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, a soft moan escaping her lost in the river's murmur. The scent of his cologne, sandalwood and cedar mixed with jasmine, enveloping her. The crowd cheered, but the world was just them. Two hearts, coded as one. The reception was a Charleston celebration, tables draped in white linens laden with shrimp and grits, peach cobbler and sweet tea. The flavors a nod to the low country's soul. Lanterns swayed, casting golden light, and the gullah band played a lively beat, drawing guests to a dance floor on the grass. Richard stayed close, his hand entwined with Kayla's, or resting on her back as if she might vanish. He laughed freely, his deep chuckle blending with the music, even joining Nia and the Bronzeville crew in a clumsy two-step that had Kayla doubled over with laughter. You're hopeless, she teased, pulling him back, her arms around his neck, the sunset painting her skin. Blame the muse, he shot back, spinning her, his hands warm on her waist, his dimple flashing. The music slowed, and they swayed her head on his chest, his heartbeat a rhythm she knew by heart. But trouble stirred. Lila approached, her face tense, showing them her phone. Vanessa's back, she said, displaying a gossip blog post. Richard Hayes's failed merger, fueled by Bronzeville opportunist. The article smeared Kayla's book as a scam, and Richard's leadership as unstable, gaining traction online. The publishers rattled. Lila said, "This could hurt your book sales, Kayla and the program's funding." Kayla's stomach dropped, but Richard's grip tightened. "She's not touching us," he said, his voice steel. "We'll end this together." Naya, overhearing, grinned wickedly. "I've got dirt," she said, pulling out her laptop. "Vanessa's been dodging taxes. Financial records I hacked. Want to leak them." Kayla shook her head, her conscience firm. "No," she said, her voice steady. "We're better than her. Let's tell our truth on our terms." Richard nodded, pride in his eyes. "A podcast," he suggested. "Tech Talks is big in Austin. They'll jump at our story." Lila arranged an interview that night. In a Charleston studio, Kayla and Richard sat before microphones, their voices weaving a tale of broken dreams, rain-soaked kisses, and a love that rose above betrayal. Kayla spoke of Bronzeville's fire, her grandmother's lessons, and the kids who coded hope. Richard admitted his guilt over Lydia, his fear of losing Kayla, and the deal he'd sacrificed for her. "She's not just my wife," he said, squeezing her hand. "She's my reason." The podcast went viral, drowning Vanessa's post. Listeners flooded social media, calling Kayla a phenomenal woman and Richard a changed man. The publisher greenlit a memoir, and Lila secured a second book deal. Vanessa's tax records leaked, Naya's work no doubt, and she faded into obscurity. The true triumph came at dusk as Kayla and Richard slipped to the river's edge, the reception's gullah beat fading behind them. The moon rose, casting silver on the water, the air thick with jasmine and salt. Kayla's lace dress shimmered, her curls catching the light, and Richard's gray suit was soft against her as he pulled her close. His hand rested on her lower back, fingers tracing the curve through the lace, sending a warm shiver through her. "You were a force today," he said, his voice low, his eyes tracing her face, catching the moonlight on her skin. "We were a force," she corrected, her fingers brushing his jaw, feeling the faint stubble her touch lingering. "But we're not done fighting, are we?" Her voice was teasing, but her eyes held a quiet vow. He chuckled, his lips grazing her ear, his breath hot teasing. "Never. But with you, I'm ready for anything." Their lips met a kiss slow and deep, a promise sealed by the river. The waves' rhythm blended with their breaths, his hands sliding to her hips, pressing gently, feeling the warmth through the lace. Kayla's fingers slipped under his jacket, grazing his chest, nails scraping lightly, drawing a soft groan from him, the sound vibrating against her lips. The moonlight illuminated their silhouettes, her curls a dark halo, his frame a steady anchor. The scent of his cologne, sandalwood and cedar, mixed with the river's briny tang, enveloping her, a vow of forever. He pulled back, forehead touching hers, his voice a whisper. "I love you, Kayla. Always. I love you too," she said, her hand over his heart, feeling its steady beat. "Forever." Richard surprised her, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a silver pendant, etched with a magnolia, a match for her bracelet. "For our new chapter," he said, clasping it around her neck. "And for Bronzeville, I'm funding a tech hub at the community center, a gift to the city that raised you." Kayla's eyes welled, joy spilling over. "You didn't have to," she whispered, throwing her arms around him, tears mixing with her smile. "I wanted to," he said, kissing her forehead. "Because you deserve it, and our future starts with you." They returned to the reception, dancing under the stars, the gullah band playing Wade in the Water. Kayla rested her head on his shoulder, his heartbeat a rhythm she'd coded into her soul. "I thought love was supposed to be easy," she murmured. "But with you it's wild, messy, and perfect," Richard tightened his arms, his voice low. "Love's not tame, Kayla, but if it sets you ablaze, it's worth everything." They swayed the moon, bearing witness to a love that had conquered betrayal, shadows and storms. Kayla whispered Giovanni's words. "I am so perfect, so divine." With Richard, she believed it their story, a testament to courage, healing, and a love that burned brighter than any Charleston sunset. From a rain-soaked kiss to a love that lit up Charleston. Kayla and Richard's journey has been a wildfire. Did their story code your heart? Share your thoughts in the comments and hit that subscribe button to join us for more tales of love, redemption, and triumph in Hearts in Code.